What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Unofficial Pre Fight Show, where I break down upcoming UFC cards, let you know who's going to win each fight and why. This coming up weekend, we have Strickland versus Jack Hermansson. Without further ado, let's get started. So the main event this coming up weekend, we have two top 10 middleweights in Jack Hermansson versus Strickland going at it. And the only place I really see Jack Hermansson having the advantage in this fight is in the wrestling. That being said, I do think Strickland's going to win. I think overall he's a much more well-rounded fighter. He's coming into this fight on a 5-fight win streak, so he's got some major momentum. And let's be honest, the guy's a bit of a psychopath. And if there's one thing that I've learned looking at fights, analyzing fights over the years, is you never bet against a psychopath. I think with Strickland's fight IQ as well, his decent takedown defense, he'll be able to keep this fight standing for the most part. He'll be able to scramble back up if he does get taken down, and we're able to use his reach, fight at a distance, and ultimately come across with the victory. In the co-main event this weekend, we have Soriano versus Nick Maksimov. Two prospects in the middleweight division. I've been really impressed with both of these guys. Nick Maksimov coming off the Contender Series where he actually fought at heavyweight, took a last-minute fight at heavyweight, won that fight, got his UFC contract, and looked really impressive against Cody Brindage, I believe his name was, last year. Completely dominated, coming out of that Nick Diaz camp. A lot of potential, a lot of hype around this guy. And then you got Soriano. It's a tough name to pronounce. I'm working on those Hawaiian pronunciations. But he's a great striker, got a great chin. Have also been pretty impressed with this guy. This is kind of like that classic grappler versus striker sort of matchup. And although I think both have a ton of potential, I am going to go with the Hawaiian, Soriano. I think he might come away with a finish here. He's got some great striking, a lot of power, and picking him on this fight. The third fight we have on the main card is Chavkot Rakamanov versus Carlson Harris. I've got to say, out of all the fights on this card, this is definitely the one that I'm looking forward to most. Carlson Harris is coming off of the show Dana White's Looking for a Fight, where he beat one of Khabib's top training partners, a guy who had a ton of hype coming into that fight, who Dana White was actually there to sign if he won. Carlson Harris gets the upset victory. He ends up getting signed, and this guy's looked great so far in his UFC career. That being said, Chavkot Rakamanov is an absolute savage. This guy has pretty much steamrolled his first two opponents in the UFC. He's an undefeated fighter, and let's be honest, anybody who comes walking into the octagon wearing an Eastern European hat, you don't bet against. So I'm going with him in this fight. His last fight, he looked great. He completely dominated Michael Prazeres, I believe his name is, from Brazil, a veteran, a guy who's had a ton of UFC fights. And I think Rakamanov could definitely be a top 10 ranked fighter in the not too distant future, maybe even later this year. So we're going with Rakamanov, but looking forward to this one the most on the entire card. The next fight we have on the main card is Smiling Sam Alvey versus Brendan Allen. So originally, Smiling Sam was supposed to fight Phil Hawes Tuesday afternoon. News broke out that Phil Hawes pulled out due to an injury. Brendan Allen stepped in. Now, looking at this fight, I'm sure like many of you out there, I'm actually shocked that Sam Alvey is still on the UFC roster. This guy hasn't won a fight in his last 7 outings in the octagon. He's got 6 losses and 1 draw. So although Brendan Allen is taking this fight on 4 days' notice, I'm going to have to go with him. I think he's just overall a much better fighter. He's a better striker, better grappler. Really the only chance that Sam Alvey has in this fight is if he lands that power punch, which he's known to knock some guys out with. But I just don't see it happening. Brendan Allen's pretty durable as well. So as much as, I respect you, Sam, thank you for all the great fights, but your time has passed. Quite frankly, I'm kind of surprised you're still on the roster. I think this is your final fight, and Brendan Allen will likely get the victory. Next up, we have Bryan Battle versus Treason Gore. If you remember, this actually should have been the finale of the Ultimate Fighter show last year. Treason Gore got injured, and now we get to see the fight play out this weekend. I've been going back and forth on this fight a little bit. I see a case for both guys getting the W. Treason Gore I was really impressed with on the Ultimate Fighter show. He's probably the most athletic, most explosive guy on the show. Bryan Battle has more experience rather. I think technically he's a bit of a better fighter as well. I'm not sure what Treason Gore's injury was, but I'm hoping with his long layoff, he's had time to develop as a fighter and get better, because I think he's got a ton of potential, and the explosiveness and raw athleticism is there for this guy, and it's just a matter of him developing as a fighter. So I'm going to go with Treason Gore on this one. I do think this fight's a bit of a coin toss. I think either guy's got a great shot of winning. It's one of those like 50-50 fights. Interested to see how it plays out, but we're going to go with Treason Gore. And the last fight on the main card, we have Julian Arosa versus Steven Peterson. Two absolute MMA veterans here. I think combined they have like 64 pro MMA fights. These guys have fought absolutely everywhere. I'm going to go with Julian Arosa on this one. I think with his 4.5-inch reach advantage, he'll be able to control the striking nicely, keep his distance. He's got really good footwork as well, and he's got legitimate grappling submission skills. So if the fight goes to the ground, I think he'll be able to handle himself well on the ground too. Overall, I just think he's a better fighter, and I'm going to say that he gets the W on this one. And that's it, guys. We're going to start off just reviewing fights on the main card. So I'm done here. Enjoy the fights this weekend, and we'll see you next week.